Nobody will know who he is anyway.
Moish doesn't
avoid that.
Moish doesn't want me to daven there. He wants me to, maybe if I daven there, maybe I could change shuls. It's been like 2 years since I've gone to Shomer Shabbos, but I pay membership there. I'm sure Aguda would love my membership and not go to shul also.
But they don't have slichot right now, so you're out
This
of
is
luck.
true. This is true. Okay. Let's start.
Next week you can start when they start slichas.
It's different slichas.
I know.
Where's everybody? What happened to Yosy?
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I will be right back. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
When I set up YouTube, I was getting the live feed in my microphone at the same time, so I was hearing everybody twice. Okay, so we are up to Perek Bakom Maron. It's a very fun perek. In the shul, whenever there's rules, everybody has a million reasons to justify why the rules aren't for them. I'm different, I'm a hin, I'm a hair, that's how Jews are. Everything doesn't apply to me. So we're soon going to see I don't pay tax, and I don't have to listen to this rule, or that rule, because we're different, because I hin, because I hair. Everybody has a drei that the rule doesn't apply to me. So we think this is a new concept. We're going to soon see that this is a Gemara. It's a Gemara that says, sure, there's rules for everybody else, but I'm different. I'm a hin, with the hair, there's always an exception. So let's see the Heilige Mishnah. Bakoyel Ma'rovin, you can use any type of food to make an Erev with. What type of Erev? There's 3 types of Erev. There's Erev Tchumen, Erev Chetzeres, and Shituf and Mevudas. So we learned about them, but we'll review them quickly. Erev Chetzeres.
Also, Erev Tavshulim.
I'm sorry, Erev Tchumen, Erev, not Erev Tavshulim. Or could be Erev Tavshulim as well, but that's not what we're talking about now.
No.
Erev Chetzeres, if there's multiple homes in one great chutzner, even though that's technically Rosh Hashanah, the Rabbanan Regoizer from Shlomo Melech that since it looks like it's communal, and there's multiple homes in this chutzner, we need to do something to unify it. And we unify it with food. And we'll learn Rashi to describe how that's done. Sending in a mavui, if you have multiple chatzeres that open up into a mavui, again, you need to unify things. And then the third Erev is Erev Tchumen. We know you're not allowed to walk more than 2,000 amas out of a city. So what if I want to go to the next city, and that next city is just under 4,000 amas away? How am I going to get there? I can't walk there. I have to stop at 2,000. I have to stop at the halfway mark. But if I set myself up to be dwelling smack in the middle between the 2 cities, now I have a radius of 2,000 amas on either side, which connects me to my city and connects me to the next city. So by setting myself up that I'm stationed right at that center point for Shabbos, that allows me to walk that 4,000 amma distance. Now, how do I set myself up at that point? Again, in the Jewish religion, it's all about food. If there's food there, that's where my mind is. So let's see Rashi to elaborate on it. So I'm sorry, first let's read the Mishnah, then we'll do Rashi. The Chomai Rav and the Mishnah, you can use anything for an Erev or for Shituf and Mavuyos, chutz min hamayim u'min hamelach, except for water and salt. So Rashi says, chutz min hamayim hamelach, the lav midi de mozin. Melach, salt, and water are not things that satisfy, that nourish you. The time of the Erev, how does Erev work? We should, the daitoi, his mind, the dirasai, and his dwelling, is the mokim is an isotu. A person lives where his food is. The chivin should nasnu, called b'nei achotzer, they mezonin b'nei sechad, since everybody in the chotzer put their food in one home, nasiki ilu kulon dorim b'sachad. It's as if they all live there. If you want to have an idea of how this works, if you look at the kitchen during Kiddush Club, it's made for 3 people, but there's 15 people squeezed into it. That's what it's like. It looks like everyone lives there in that kitchen where Kiddush Club is going on. The Nimtzu Kulam Rishasachas, that combines everything into one big rishos. Now that's how the Erev Chetzeres works in the Shituf and the Vuyos. How about Erev Tchumen? It's Nasa Kamisha Shabas. The Bach changes it. It's as if he rested Shom in that place. And therefore, because his food is there, therefore Misham Yeshlo Alpayim Amma L'chol Ruach. And therefore, his pivot point, where he has a radius of 2,000, is from that place where he designated where he will be for Shabbos. Therefore, it's food. In Judaism, it's all about food. Okay, it's not about the Benjamins. It's about food. Okay, so I just want to put that a very interesting thing that's not Oishgalton, but it is maybe the result of the elephant spoke out that is brought down in Rashi, and I looked up the Rashi and I couldn't find it. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu was negotiating with Avram Avinu about destroying Sodom, he said, "Amachase ani me Avram." Can I cover up from Avram what I'm about to do? And therefore he had to bring it to Avram. Avram is going to build a nation, and he's going to command his children about my mitzvahs. He's going to carry on Yiddishkeit. How could I not include him in this decision? And Rav Elvin said, Rashi says, one of the things that Avram Avinu is going to do is he's going to set up Eruvin. I looked at the Rashi over there. I couldn't find it, so maybe it's a medrash. Did anyone ever hear of such a medrash that Hashem told Avram? Hashem said, how can I withhold my decision about Sodom from Avram? He's going to make Eruvin. I couldn't find where it said that. But Rabbi Elvin wants to taina that Mayim and Melech, one of the reasons why Mayim and Melech are good is because they're both things that Klola was. Mayim was the Klola of the Mabel. Melech was the Klola of Sodom. There are things that are associated with Klola, and because of that, they shouldn't be used for Erev to bring people together. Based on that, Rabbi Elvin wanted a taina that's why it makes sense. Hashem told Avram, how could I not tell you about Sodom when you're the one who's going to be careful when you're making Erev and not to use Melech and Mayim? So you were involved a little bit in this. So because of that, you need to know about it.
So there is a medrash that I never connected it to this parsha, but there's a medrash that says that the Avos kept all of the mitzvahs, even the Rabban. He kept even the Rabbanans and the exact afilu erev tafshilin.
So that's the medrash. So it is such a medrash.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'd never connected it to these psukim here. I'm familiar with that medrash.
So it could be. He didn't say Rashi. It could be called a medrash. I'm misreading. You know, when you're listening to something in 2 times the speed playback, sometimes Rashi and medrash could sound the same. Okay. So I looked very stupid today in shul. I'm opening at the Chumash, reading the Rashi, and it's not there. You know. Okay. Additionally, the halacha is that every 3rd year you have to take something called Ma'aser Sheni. So let's say you have $1 million worth of produce, so you set aside $100,000 worth of produce. What are you going to do with the $100,000 worth of produce? How are you going to get it up to your shalayim? And if you're not going tomorrow, it's going to get spoiled. So the halacha is you could redeem it. Either you could sell it to somebody or you could redeem it yourself. You got a fifth. So imagine, how do you redeem it? You put money, and then the food becomes chulin. So now you have $100,000 of cash that you have to only consume in your shalayim, and it's got to be used for food. So the halacha is akol nikach b'kesef meiser. You could buy any type of food with kesef meiser. When you take that money to your shalayim, you have $100,000. You can go to any restaurant you want. Chutz min hamayim u'min hamelech. So if you go to Israel for a yom tov, how you can spend $100,000 in food? You buy a lot of shares of Apple, and that'll be able to. If you buy a lot of shares of Apple, so you're buying apples, and that's how you spend $100,000. We're going to soon see some other gimmicks.
Or you go to Pesach or Sukkot's hotel.
That's what
you go with your family.
The problem is that's what I wanted to time it. The problem is you only have to spend money on food, not on hotel. So how do you get around that? So that's what we're going to work on. We're going to have a solution for that.
There's always ways. It's a package deal. You pay just for the food. You get the free hotel.
Otazoi. That's exactly what the American tell you. I'll pay you $1,000 a night. I want to stay in the Citadel, and I'll pay the Citadel $1,000 a day for food. Throw in the hotel room. That's exactly the answer. It's developing. See, what you're thinking. Hashem should help the car of Mamish. You should have $100,000 of my.
To go to Pesach hotel.
You know how to spend it. If you know how to spend it, you should have it. Zok the Haley more advice.
It has to be more than 100,000 because you have to add a chaimish.
Oh, that's right. It'll be about 120,000. So, okay, you won't stay in the Citadel. You'll stay in the, well, what's even better than the Citadel? You'll stay in there's a new one already. What's the new one? The Waldorf. Stay in the Waldorf. Hanoider min ha-mozon. Hanoider min ha-mozon. If someone makes a nether, I'm not going to have mozon. Mutar b'mayim v'melech, again, because we said mayim and melech are not. Now, do you have to be able to eat your own eruv? Zok the Heilige Mishnah, my Eruvin, the Nozer b'yayin. A Nozer is not allowed to drink wine, yet he's allowed to make an eruv with wine. Why is that? Rashi tells us because he can feed other people with it. As long as it's food, even though he's not going to eat it, maybe he'll host, and therefore you can make it. Normally, Yisrael can't eat truma. Only a kohen can eat truma. Nevertheless, a Yisrael could use truma as an area. Sumchus Omer b'chulin, only with chulin. So it's funny. Sumchus only argues on the last thing of Yisrael b'truma. Why didn't Sumchus comment on the fact that a Nazir could use wine for an area? The Gemara will discuss that. Rashi says.
Maybe Simchas was a kohen.
Ah, very good. Very good. Okay, well, a kohen did base of press. You can also, a kohen can make his erev, he can place his erev tchumen. You can place it in a base of pras. A base of pras is a place where there's a suffix if there's a cave in there. So the kohen can't get there. Rashi said the kohen could get there. There's a base of pras where choshet the small bone fragments in the field. So as long as he blows as he enters, it's like clearing a minefield. There's ways to clear the minefield and he can get to his erev. Even in an actual graveyard, a kohen can place his erev. How will he get there? He can actually put himself into a box that would repel the tumah, and they can carry him in this box right over where his food is, and he can get it. So therefore, he's able to get it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, when it comes to Jews, ein lemeitim in clothes. Any general rule doesn't mean anything. You can always have an exception. No matter what rule, ze'aklal, whatever Mishnah says a rule, there's always an exception to the rule. And that's how Jews work. I'm different. You have your rule. You have your rule here. I'm different. You have to wear masks. I'm different. I don't have to wear masks. I'm immune. I'm this. I'm that. Everybody has an excuse why the rules don't apply to them. Like in our Mishnah, it says you can make air with everything except for minor melech. So that indicates there's some level of precision. If the Mishnah says there's an exception, it must mean that the rule is accurate. But even then, the rule is not accurate. When Rabbi Yochanan expressed his halacha, he said a one-liner. It's mashma mechlal d'la hochakoy. Obviously, Rabbi Yochanan wasn't saying his comment on a brisa or on a mishnah that uses the word chutz, such as our mishnah, because then he would have said ein l'meidim l'klal. The fact that he's stuck even in a place shenemar b'chutz is mashma that he's not standing. He's not referring to a place shenemar b'chutz. So the Frek Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan's comment is not on our mishnah. Heichakoy, on which mishnah was he making this comment? So Gemara Hasamkai, he was holding over there. Where's that? The mishnah in Kedushin. Kol mitzvah to say shazman grama. Any mitzvah to say that's dependent on time. Anoshim chayovim, the noshim pturos. Mishalezman grama. If it's a mitzvah that always applies, it's not time related. Then echad noshim, echad anoshim chayovim. Frek Gemara uklalahu, is that a rule? I'm going to show you exceptions to that rule. Uklalahu the whole mitzvah say shazman grama. Noshim Peturais, I'm going to show you 3 mitzvahs asay shashman grama that women are chayiv to keep. Hare matzah, there's a mitzvah of achilas matzah on Pesach. Women are chayiv to eat it because we learned from the psukim. Anyone who's mechuyev in the isser of eating chametz is also mechuyev to eat matzah because the psukim will link them together. And therefore, a woman, it's also for her to eat chametz because by Allah Saseh, she's mechuyev no Allah Saseh, so she'll surely have a chiyuv matzah. Simcha is a mitzvah of v'samachta b'chayrecha. It says v'samachta ato uveisecha. That includes women. And hakel, the mitzvah of hakel says anoshim noshim v'tav. So those are three mitzvahs shazman grama, and women are chayiv. The mitzvahs say shazman grama, the noshim chayavos. So your rule is not a good rule. The mitzvah says shaloyazman grama, noshim chayavos, and you're telling me that every mitzvah that's not zman grama, a woman is chayiv. I'm going to give you examples of mitzvah she'ein zman grama that women are potter. Harei Talmud Torah, women don't have to learn Torah. Peir v'revya, the pasuk says, "Furavu milos arch v'khavshua," and we darshan only men conquer lands. So only men are chayav and furavu. And the pidyon of them, we look at the tip that only someone who has a chiyuv to report to themselves will have a chiyuv to report to their children. So you see, these are three mitzvahs that not zman grama. The mitzvah says shalai zman grama. V'noshim tourists and women are potter. So both rules are not good rules. Yochanan, this is where Rabbi Yochanan got it from. In the maiden mina klolos, klolos you can't learn anything from. Not only in the case of the mitzvah say shazman grama that we were discussing, that Rabbi Yochanan is referring to, but even in other mishnayos, in other places in Shas, such as our mishnah, if there's a cloud, even if the Tana uses the word chutz, which would indicate a certain level of accuracy or precision, it's still not precise. It's still a rule that has exceptions. But
if women have accepted the mitzvah, then the chayavim on it, even though it's a mitzvah shazman grama.
Could be. Which mitzvah are you referring to?
I don't know, but I remember somewhere like that Nashim were makabel the mitzvah on themselves. And
there's a lot of mitzvahs that say shazman grama that women accept it for themselves. Okay, look more about it. Amar Abaye v'tein Rabbi Yirmiyah. I'm going to show you other examples throughout Shas where you find this concept. Oid klal ech ach is an echad acher. Oid klal acher ahu. Now we know Azov is an avatum. If Azov carries anything, he makes that thing that he carries into an avatum, I believe. And if he stands on anything, so he puts his weight on something, there he's not going to make a tamei unless there's certain conditions. So let's see what the Brisa lays out. Oid kol acher ahu, kol shenisa al gabei Azov. Anything that Azov carries, the halach is tamei. It will become tamei. The chol shazov nisa Allah, but anything that carries Azov, so if Azov puts his weight on something else, Torah would be Torah, except for the following items. Chutz min haroy l'mishkav. If it's something that's normally lied on, like a bed, so if Azov lies on the bed, even though he doesn't touch the bed, there's a sheet in between, or he's on 10 mattresses, and he doesn't touch the lower mattresses, those mattresses all become tamei. Umoishan, or if he sits on a chair, he sits on something, or even on a bench, or even on a milk carton, or even on a block, whatever Azov will sit on will become tamei. And the other, if there's a special person that teaches us that if you carry Azov, you become tamei. Practical more, the suleka, are there no other things that Azov could sit on that will be tamei besides Mishkav, Moshe, and Adam? Well, Ika Merka, we know if Azov is riding, like sitting on a saddle, riding an animal, he also makes it tamei. Exactly what is the case of Merkav, where it's not Moshe as well? Either Yosy alei, if he's sitting on a saddle, well, Hani Moshe, I don't need a special category of Merkav. It's Moshe. It falls into that same category. So tomorrow I'm not hachi coming in. Ha'ika gabad ukva. There's something called a pommel. When you sit on the saddle, there's like a piece of wood that sticks up right at the front of the saddle that you can hold on to. That item you don't sit on. But when you're riding the saddle, you're riding. It's part of what you're riding. The Tanya ha'ukov tamei Moshe, the actual saddle that you sit on is tamei Moshe you're sitting on. But tofus, this pommel, tamei merkav, that's tamei machmas merkav. So the Brisa said the only things that will become tamei if they carry us off are mishkav, Moshe, and Adam. Yet there's also merkav that the Brisa omitted. El shmami no, and the maiden naklalois afilu b'makom shenemar b'chutz. Even if there's a chutz, it's still not accurate because you see there's another exception, the exception of the toifus, which is the palm. Omar Avinu v'temer of Nachman, Now we have our Mishnah as well as an example. Are there no other things that you can't make with an Erev? There's mushrooms and there's truffles that you cannot make, you cannot use for an Erev. The Gra here says that the kasha is not from the Chol Marovin. The kasha is from a Kol Nichlim because of Meiser, and he changed it to Meiser because he holds that it's not relevant. The fact that Kamein and Patrios, that's not an extra exception because Memonavshim. If they're cooked, you actually could use them for Eruvin. And if they're not cooked, the reason why they're not royal is because there's a pasuk that's lemayit them, so it wouldn't fit into this exception. Okay, let's see the Gemara about it. You're allowed to buy any food with kesef meiser. There's a machloikis between Eliezer and the Beis Bechanina, and it's related to a halacha that we're going to quote soon. Chad masnei erev. One of these two will say that the halacha quoted is referring to erev. The chad masnei meiser, and the other one is going to say that the halacha that we're about to quote refers to meiser only. Chad masnei erev, and what is that? Lo ishanu elamayim b'fnei atzmai melech b'fnei atzmai. That we say you cannot use mayim or melech for an erev, that's if you had only salt or only water. But if you have salt water, there ma'arvin, that's considered a food you could make an erev with that. And Rashi points out why, because it's salt water is good l'tava ben pita. You can dip your bread into it, therefore it will classify as mutter. The chad masnei meiser, and the other one learned a bigger chiddush that even for meiser you're allowed to buy this. They nichen because of meiser. You're allowed to buy salt water with kesef meiser. So you're thinking to yourself, I have $100,000 of kesef meiser. I'm going to buy main melech with it. That's $1. Territories, if you go before Pesach and you see what the stores are selling salt water for, you'll realize that it'll eat up a nice chunk of your $100,000. Dr. Gemara, man the masnei meiser. The person who says that even for meiser you're allowed to buy salt water, kol shchen erev, surely for erev, because erev it's mistaber to say that you need less of a food for erev than you need for meiser, and we'll soon see why. Masnei erev, but the one that who learns that this halacha was said that erev you allowed to use salt water, he might agree that you cannot buy salt water with moist meiser sheni. Aval meiser loy, my timer. It needs to be a fruit, and clearly salt water is not a fruit. And we're going to soon see on the base the lamudim from where we know it has to be some type of fruit or even a live animal, even an animal, but it can't be something like a doimin, such as salt and water. Zok the Gemara. Rabbi Yitzchak said that you're allowed to buy salt water with meiser sheni. Frank the Gemara, how could you say that? Amazing. Hey, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish said a testimony in front of Rabbi Eliezer. And what did he say? Shall base Abba in my family growing up, for you like him sear because of meiser. They would buy this fish juice, which was basically salty water, and they would buy it because of meiser. So he seems to be saying testimony that you could buy salt water with moist meiser. So far, so good. We don't have a problem. Yitzchak also said that. But Omar Loi, Rabbi Eliezer said, I think you're making a mistake, Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe you're not remembering your childhood well. Shema Loi Shemata, Ela Kishakir Ve'dogim Urubahem. Maybe the salt water or the tzir that in your family, your father bought with moist meiser, did you check? Maybe there were some pieces of fish inside. And that's what the money was going for. But I don't believe for salt water, for tzir, I don't believe in your father's family they spent meiser sheni on that. The Afilu Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadish, who sang this testimony, and clearly he didn't believe that there was fish in the tzir his father bought. Like Amar leBetzir, he didn't say standard salt water is what was purchased by his father. He said his father bought fish juice. The shumna the perim that has some oil, some fish oil in it, so it's not pure water and salt. and therefore maybe they used to buy it with moist mashasheni. But they would not have bought plain, simple salt water. So this is now Shver Rabbi Yitzchak. You, Rabbi Yitzchak, said that you're allowed to buy salt water with moist mashasheni. From the story and the conversation between Rabbi Yehuda and Galish and Rabbi Elazar, you seem to say that at best you could buy tzir that has some fish oil in it, but pure salt water you wouldn't be allowed to. Oh, Rabbi Yosef, it's not a kasha. Loi nitzricha ella shenosan l'soichan shem. This that Rabbi Yitzchak said you could buy salt water with money of mashasheni, that's not plain salt water. It's salt water that has a little oil mixed into it. So don't tell me that he bought salt water with moist mashasheni. He bought oil. Sure, the oil was in a lot of salt water, but he bought the oil. So where do you see that you could buy salt water? So if you want to know, and this is David Dayan says it. What he did is there was only $1 worth of oil there, and there was $20 worth of salt water. He paid $21 for it. He said, "I'm paying $21 for this whole thing." So he might be buying some oil, but he's buying a lot of salt water too, and his money is being spent on the salt water. But he's doing it b'avlo. So the chiddush is that you're allowed to buy b'avlo. So exactly what David Dayan said. If you have $100,000 and you're only allowed to spend it on food, and you want to have a nice Yerushalayim vacation, go to the Waldorf and tell them, "I want to buy $100,000 worth of meals in 7 days. Can you throw in the rooms while you're at it?" And then it's not a problem because it's b'avlo. Don't try this without asking the rabbi. But from the Gemara it says Havlo is right. In fact, are you kidding me? Ubavlo mishari, you're allowed to make such a trick? The Gemara absolutely in Vatanya, and I'll prove it to you. In Bagbag Oimer, the Bagbag doesn't only say afachva the kulaba, the Bagbag had other solutions. And he said, let's look at the pasuk that discusses what one is allowed to purchase with the money of Ma'aser. Zok the heilige pasuk. When the sata akesa, the chol asher ta'av nafshecha, ba'bokar, uvatzoin, uvayayin, uvashechar, and again the chol asher t'shalch nafshecha. You can spend it on whatever you want, as long as it's one of these 4 things. Whatever you want. So the Gemara darshans word by word what we extract from each of these items. Babakar, what do we learn from Bakar? You're buying a cattle, you're buying a cow, right? Part of what you're buying is its hide. You're only allowed to spend Meiser Shani money on food. So you shech the animal, you eat it, and now you're left with hide. What do you do with this hide? Maybe you have to sell it, get cash for it, and then buy more food. No. Once you spent your money on a cow, you're allowed to keep the hide, you're allowed to make shoes out of it, make you wife a new purse, make yourself a nice leather jacket. You're allowed to use that or for chulin. So you see that b'havlo, you're allowed to buy things that don't fit in with the description of what you're allowed to buy from Ma'aser Sheni. The hide, you're not allowed to buy leather, but as part of an animal, and definitely a significant percentage of the funds that you're giving the animal merchant is for the hide as well. Uvetzain, what is it from tzain? You're allowed to buy a sheep, even though it has a lot of wool on it. It has shearings. Now, why is that different? Or is part and parcel of the animal. You could never peel the skin off an animal while the animal is alive, unless you're a Muslim. But normal, you'd never peel the skin off an animal while the animal is alive. But a sheep, it's very normal to shear its wool. So it's sort of less connected to the animal because it's very removable even while the animal is alive. Yet the Chiddush of Uvetzoin teaches us that you're even allowed to spend moist Ma'aser Sheni on a sheep that's full of wool, and you're allowed to use the wool, and that's definitely not food. Ubeyayin, the pasuk is Ubeyayin. Malamet shalachim yayin al gav kinkanai. You want to buy a beautiful gold wine bottle, so as long as it's full of wine, you could buy it. You could buy the nice jug, and that jug you can keep permanently. You don't have to eat it. Uveshechar is like beer. Malamet shalachim temed mishechitz. This is a chiddush. Temed is after they finish processing the grape, they'll take the seeds of a grape that have some little bit of flavor in it, and they soak the seeds in water. So the water should absorb some of the flavor of the seeds, and then it actually ferments and becomes like something of a low-grade wine. So there, you're literally buying water. You're not buying grapes. You're mamish buying water. Even that you're allowed to buy, and that's the chiddush of the Mishnah. So we have 4 halachas here that we learn. We learn hide, we learn wool, we learn jug, flask, and we learn temet. Amar Rabbi Yochanan is going to say one little line that's going to lead to an entire Amud Gemara to explain this special line that Rabbi Yochanan is about to say. And this is what he said. Mam de Matagam li babakar aliba devin bagbak. We just learned a brisa from the bagbak who told us a chiddush of what you learned from babakar. I don't know why it's a chiddush. Whoever can explain to me why it's a chiddush, I'm going to be so appreciative to him. I'm going to be machshav him. I'm going to respect him. That mavil mamone abasre levein. I'm going to carry his clothing after him to the bathhouse. Of course, that's without COVID, because then nowadays you only allow one person at a time in the mikveh. But I'd be happy to take his kelim to the mikveh. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan saying, I'm struggling to understand the bagbag and the chiddush of babak.
That meant that he wanted to give him COVID because he knew it.
That's right. That's correct. Because it's something that Rabbi Yochanan couldn't figure out. So for my timer, what exactly is Rabbi Yochanan's struggle in understanding the chiddush of the bagbag? All of the limudim that the Bagbag teaches us, I understand the chiddush of why you need to teach us, but I don't understand the chiddush of the babakar that teaches you that you're allowed to buy the animal even though you're getting the hide. The lights are. I don't understand why you need it. Let's analyze this carefully. My truth. Let's first understand why you need all of these chidushim from the Bagbag. Because of Rechman of the book. If all it said was babakar, Havamina, Bakar Hudim is David Nagavay. You're allowed to buy a bakar and keep its owner. Mishum de Gufeyu. It's mamish part of the animal. In other words, you can't skin it off or kill the animal. Aval sign, but I would think that maybe I can't buy the wool off a sheep. Aval sign agav gizasa, the lav gufeyu, it's not part of its body. Harai, you can shear it off and it'll have no impact on the animal's health. Emalot, maybe that you would not be able to do. So you need the sign to teach you that you're even allowed to buy an animal for its wool. Because of Rechman B'Tzayin, if I only knew that you could buy an animal for its wool, I'll gav gizasa, having mishum d'mechubar. The wool could be cut off, but the mice now it's connected to the body, so it's one item. So I could buy it and then keep the wool. But to buy wine, to be able to buy its jug, they're 2 separate items. The wine is not part of the jug. Who said that I can buy the jug through the wall? So I need a special chiddush for that. Because of coming beyayin, and if I would only say beyayin, sure, the jug is not part of the wine, but it's really the only way to transport the wine. So it makes sense that it should come together. Just water that absorbs the taste. The kiyuv, which is basically water. I might think you're not allowed to buy it because you're not allowed to buy mayim with moist mashashem. So therefore, well, now let's do it backwards. Maybe since shecher is the biggest chiddush, all it should have said was shecher, and then I would know everything else. Dr. Gemara, you wouldn't. Because of shecher, havamina, I would have thought shecher doesn't mean temet. I would have never brought it to the big chiddush. We're building up the chedushim. But if I only had shecher alone, I wouldn't say such a big chiddush. You know how I would have translated it? Havamina, my shecher, the vela kilas, the peru. I would have learned that it means a pressed fig cake that's actually intoxicating. It actually has alcoholic content, but it's a fruit. And that's how I would have explained it. I would have never thought to explain shecher as meaning kiyur ba'alma had I not had the prerequisite, the pre-knowledge of knowing that yain is good. And I could buy a jug through the wine. Because the peru, amal yain, agav kinkanoi, emaloi, maybe you cannot buy wine together with the jug. Because of the yain agav kinkanoi, there's only one way to buy wine, is in a jug. Maybe that's why it's allowed. I will turn agav gizasa, where I can shear off, I can have the vendor shear off the wool before he sells it to me, and I just buy the animal itself. Maybe I'm not allowed to buy an animal and get its wool. Because of the sign, I feel like Gav Gizosa, I'm allowed to do it. Nuba Bakr Lamali. Why is it a Bakr? If you want to tell me, because what do you need the Bakr? If I know you could buy tzoin, which includes the wool as well as the skin, so I already know that I can buy something I got the skin. If I can buy something for its wool, for sure I can buy something for its skin. So why do I need the Bakr? Maybe you want to suggest the reason why I need the Bakr is Eloi Kazav Rachman of a Bakr. Had we not known that you can buy an animal for its skin, Havamina Tzoin Agav in Agav Gizas Eloi. Once I have the first step from the Bakr that I could buy a cattle for its skin, then Tzoin, I don't need it to teach me that because I already know you can buy an animal for its skin. So Tzoin will one up the Chiddush and it'll say I'm even allowed to buy Tzoin for its wool. So I need Babokar to enlighten us as to what we could learn from Tzoin. Because of Babokar, Lasuya Oyra. And therefore, I Yasser like Tzoin, Lasuya Gizasa. But Zokim, I thought a good time. I don't need Babokar to prove to me that the Chiddush of Tzoin is the wool and not just the hide. I'd know even without Babokar, I would know from the Tzoin that it includes both the hide and the wool. Why is that? Because he like Bakar, loy have amina tzoin agav oire in agav gizasaloi. I would never suggest that from tzoin I only know that I can buy the hide, but not the shearings, not the wool. You know why? Because then came the Bakar. I would have asked the Torah picked any animal as an example. Why did the Torah go out of its way to bedavka pick tzoin, which also happens to have wool? If the Torah wanted me to think that I could only buy an animal out of its skin, the Torah should have picked an animal that only has skin. From the fact that the Torah picked an animal that has wool as well, I obviously know the Memela Yasele Tzoin, I know for sure that the fact that it says Tzoin is to teach me about the wool as well. I feel like once Tzoin tells me, independent of anything else, that you could buy an animal for its wool, surely it's hide, then Babakar Lamali, what do I need the pasuk of Babakar? Hashta tzoin agav gizosom is dabra. If you're allowed to buy tzoin for its wool, Bakar agav surely I can buy cattle for its hide. So why? So now that we went through this whole cheshbon, this whole analysis, we realize that we don't need Babakar, and that's what Rabbi Yochanan meant. Because from this sequence of logic, it's quite clear that we would have learned everything we need to know, even if the Torah would have omitted the word Babak. That's the end of this subject. And now the Gemara is going to start a new subject. The Ma'ika Miflagi, Rabbi Yehuda ben Godish, Rabbi Loser.
So 1 minute. So that's not resolved.
It's unresolved.
Okay.
So you could still have an opportunity. If you figure this out, then Rabbi Yochanan will carry your clothing to the mikveh. This is an opportunity of a lifetime.
But I think this is the Makor where people donate their Meister money to Ura or to Chai Lifeline, and they collect $4,000 and they get a free hotel in Vegas.
Oh,
I think this might be the Makor right here. It's the Bagbag.
Oh,
well, exactly.
And and if you give them enough money, they'll throw in a free spa treatment, and there you have Rabbi Yochanan carrying your bathrobe for you to the spa.
Excellent.
Okay, it's up to Helig Gemara about you. The Ma'ika Miflagi, Rabbi Yehuda ben Godish, Rabbi Lozer, Bahani Tanoi Blekam. What is the source? What is the point of the disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda ben Godish and Rabbi Lozer, who we know what they said, and the Tanoim that we're going to quote in the future, who they disagree with? So let's go back to the story we just learned. Rabbi Yehuda ben Godish said testimony that in my family, my father used to buy seer with moyes meiser sheni. And the Gemara established what's seer? It's salt water with oil, basically, with fish oil. Salt water with fish oil. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda ben Godish held that with moyes meiser sheni, you're allowed to buy salt water as long as it has a little bit of oil, fish oil mixed in it. Okay? Rabbi Eliezer argued, and Rabbi Eliezer held no. There would have to be actually pieces of fish in it. So Rabbi Eliezer holds Fish, you can buy with moist mashasheni, because he held the pieces of fish in the tzir was what made it allowable to purchase the tzir. So clearly, Rabbi Elazar holds you're allowed to buy fish with moist mashasheni, and Rabbi Yehuda holds you can even allow to buy fish oil with moist mashasheni. Now, the Tanaim that we're about to quote are going to disagree, and they're going to hold you not allowed to buy fish with moist mashasheni. And let's look at that. The Gemara wants to know what's the reasoning behind this machlokes as to whether or not you're allowed to purchase fish with moist mashasheni. Dr. Rabbi Yehuda ben Goglish, Rabbi Elazar, Dash you're agreeing to. Now, we have a pasuk that we're going to darshan. We read the pasuk, we'll read it again. That's a very general, inclusive term. The Boker, Vatoinu, V'yayin, V'sheichar are very specific, restricted terms. And then at the end of again, inclusive. So there's two mechanisms with which you can darshan these types of psukim. You can use the riboy, miyut riboy method, which generally is much more inclusive. And the Gemara is going to say, if you use the riboy, miyut riboy method, which is inclusive, that will include fish, or even fish oil. But the other way to darshan it is using the klal or proper klal method, which is much more restrictive. And if you use that method, it's going to exclude fish. That's how the Gemara is going to explain the machlokes.
What kind of mechanism is a ribuy and a miut? It's not even listed.
Ribuy, miut, ribuy.
Is it listed in Rabbi Yishmael's?
No, because I think there's a machlokes in
I think it is.
Whenever you run into such a configuration, do you use the klal or proper klal method, or do you use the ribuy, miut, ribuy method?
Well,
so
why?
Shmuel obviously held that you use the klal or proper klal method. Rabbi Shmuel didn't agree with the ribuy, miut, ribuy method, but other Tanoim argue.
Okay.
So I think it's one or the other. I don't think you can do both because it's the same person. The question how you assess such a person.
So Rabbi Yishmael doesn't recognize the ribuy miut mechanism.
That's how I understand it. His approach when you see such a configuration of psukim, you would use the klal prat klal method. And we're soon going to see in the Gemara number Aleph that even the klal prat klal method, there's a more inclusive way to use it or a more restrictive way. So let's look at our options. Zok the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda ben Goglish, Rabbi Elazar, Dashi Ribuy and Miyute, and Tanoi, Dashi Koli Prati. So let's get down into the details. Rabbi Yehuda ben Goglish, Rabbi Elazar, Dashi Ribuy and Miyute. It says in the pasuk, "Nesachta Kesef, V'chol Shetav Nafshecha." That's like this comes in any color as long as you like yellow. Nesachta Kesef, V'chol Shetav Nafshecha. You could spend your moist masheni on whatever you want. Riba, that's a riba. It's very inclusive. Then there's details. B'bokar, uvatzoin, uvayayin, uvasheichar. Miyat, that's severely restricted. And then the pasuk continues of V'chol Shetav Nafshecha. Cause of a riba. Once again, the Torah repeats it's a very inclusive term. So that's what is that structure? It's a riba, umiyat riba. So when that happens, automatically riba. We include everything. My Rabbi, what is everything? Literally, Rabbi Kalmuli. You're allowed to buy anything you want with moist mashasheni. Umaymiyat. So what do we learn from the four psukim, the four words that are memayit? The Rabbi Elazar miyat seer. According to Rabbi Elazar, who holds there has to be pieces of fish in it. He holds plain seer, which is fish juice with some oil in it. That would not be allowed to be purchased with moist mashasheni. If you've been Goglish, it's meat maimu melech. He holds if it's only salt water, you would not be able to buy it with moist mashasheni. If there's a little oil mixed into it, then avada you'd be able to buy it. And that's why they were very inclusive. But the Tanoim will hold you may not buy fish with moist mashasheni. They dashi call you prati like Rabbi Shmuel does. The Tanya, the same process. They just have a different approach to analyzing it. The Shat HaKesef b'chol shtav nafshecha klal pavakru b'tzoyin v'yayin v'sheicha prat b'chol shtav nafshecha chazav v'kolor klal u'prat u'klal yachadon elokena prat. In order to include it, you don't include everything. You only include things that are similar to the prat. So let's look at the characteristics of the prat, and based on the characteristics of the prat, we will see what fits into the category, what other items share those same attributes. Ma prat mefurish, 3 it's one period that comes from another period. And Rashi explains, the egel, a calf, noiled me'ima, is born from its mother. So it's a peri, the peri. The chen seh, and the same thing with a sheep, it's born from a mother. And it applies to tzemeach as well. Novim mecharchanet. Grapes grow from grape seeds. Shazarin hacharchanet, you plant those seeds. So one fruit comes from the fruit before it. And the gidula karka, they grow from the ground. So you might ask me, how does a cow grow from the ground? So Rashi tells us, it doesn't literally mean they grow from the ground. They're nourished from the ground. Afkol, so too we can include any items that are pre-mipri, one peri from another peri, and gedula karka. Clearly, tzir will not fit into that. Clearly, tzir would not fit into that. Now, we need more information because we're looking for fish. Is fish included in this or not? With Tanya Idach, we learn another verse that says Ma Prat Mufurish Vlad Vladai Sa'aretz. So now we have a third attribute. We had pre-mipri, we had Gedula Karka, which includes fish. Now we have a third thing from the secondary Tana who's suggesting a third attribute that we would have to match in order to be able to buy this product with Moish Mashasheni. And you need Vlad Vladai Sa'aretz. What's Vlad Vladai Sa'aretz? So Rashi, when Hashem originally created them during the Ma'aseh Bereshis, what did Hashem make it out of? Shenivru min haaretz, the Ma'aseh Bereshis. But fish, I've called Vlad Vladai Sa'aretz. My way now, what's the difference between this Tanya Idach and the Tanaya before who use Klal Pratik Klal? So tomorrow, Amar Abaye, Dogim Ikibinayu. It's fish that makes the difference. Umadam a prima pri u gidula karka. Hani dogim gidula karka ninu. Fish are also called gidula karka. Why is that? So Rashi, gidula karka ninu kosavar shal dogim lizanim na karka. Even fish eat from the ground. I guess the plankton and other things that are in the oceans, they eat that, which is called gidula karka. But Laman Damar Vlad Vladai Sa'aretz, they had to be created from earth. Dogim imai ivru. When Hashem created the fish, Hashem created the fish out of water, and therefore a fish would not qualify to be purchased with moist marshasheni because it's missing the similarity of Vlad Vladai Sa'aretz. So now we have our explanation between Rabbi Yehuda ben Gadash and Rabbi Elazar who allow fish, and these other Tanaim who don't allow fish. They don't allow fish because of this third similarity that has to be matched in order to be able to purchase this product with marshasheni. And that's Vlad Sa'aretz. So I want you to know the Gemara in Chulin discusses that the animal, cattle, mammals were created out of earth. Fish were created out of water, which is much less gashmistic. And birds were created out of mud. And the Marsha says that's why behemoth that's most megushimdik, it's made purely out of earth. When you shecht it, you need to check tusamon. A fish that's made purely out of water, it's a much more ruchnistic being. It doesn't need shechita at all. And a bird, which is made out of mud, so it's not as chomerdik, gashmistic as a behemoth, but it's not nearly as elevated as a fish. You only check once in it. And the Hasidim, because of this, there's a minute by Hasidim, they eat fish with their hands. It's not to be rude. It's not to be ekeldik. It's because they're trying to show how the fish are a more ruchnistic being, so we want to connect with it better. And there's no better way to connect with a fish than to grab it and mush it in your fingers. And that's why there's such a mitzvah to eat herring, because the more herring you eat, the more ruchnistic you get. So every time my wife comments on my belly, I say, yeah, this is all ruchnis. It's all from herring. The more herring you eat, the more ruchnis you have. I have an extra 50 pounds of ruchnis in my belly that's about from the herring. Maybe the kichel also.
It's not the herring, it's the kichel.
You think so? Okay, we all wear Abaye, Dogim Gedula Karka. Are you saying that Abaye considers Dogim to be Gedula Karka? Because the way Abaye explains it is the Vlad Sa'aretz that disqualify fish. But the previous price that just required Gedula Karka, that included fish. So Frank Gemara, does Abaye actually say that? I'm going to prove to you that Abaye holds that fish are not Gidul HaKarka. They don't grow from the ground. They don't nourish from the ground. Because the Amar Abaye said the following: Ochal putisa. If someone ate a putisa, which is an insect that hangs out in the water, like you get 4 malchus, and the 4 malchus that you get, there's 2 psukim that directly address only a sheretz alamayim, and then there's 2 generic sheretz isurim lavin that refer both to sheretz hamayim and sheretz haaretz. So in total, you have 2 generics, 2 customs. That's 4 lavin for someone who eats a water insect. Nemola, if you eat a land insect, such as an ant, like the chomish, you get 5. There's the 2 generic ones that we said applies to a petis as well, and then there's 3 additional lavin that are exclusive to land types of insects. And then sira, which is a flying insect, like a sheif, you get 6 malchus. Okay. In Isa, if you hold that patis, if you hold that anything in the water is also considered something that grows from the ground, and that's why you wanted to consider fish as things that are gedulim in the aretz, well then putis and nami lilki mishum asher tasher talaretz. So then a putisa should get 7 malchus. Why 7 malchus? Because we discussed there's the 2 generic ones. There's the 2 ones that are specifically for sheretz hamayim, and then out of the 5 that the Mola gets, the 2 generic ones we counted already, and then there's the 3 ones that are custom for sheretz haaretz. So 4 plus 3 is 7. So if Abaye holds, in fact, that fish are also considered geduli haaretz, then if someone ate a putisa, which is a sheretz from the water, he should also get 7 malchus, because you should get all of the malchus that apply to a sheretz haaretz as well. Amar Ravina, you're right. In fact, according to Abaye, it's not considered haaretz, meaning according to both Tanoim, both brises that we just quoted, at the end of Amud Beis, a fish would not be included, and you would not be able to use fish. So what the nafkamina between the 2 brises? The machlokes will be whether or not you're allowed to buy a bird with the money of Mashashim. The first brisa who only uses 2 similarities, Hananami Gedula Karka. Birds are also Gedula Karka, they eat from the ground. But Lamandamar Vlad Vladoy Sa'aret, if it has to be something that was created from earth, they were not created from pure earth, they were created from mud. So let's stop a second. So now both these Tanoim seem to hold that you could not use fish. So if that's the case, I'm not sure who we were looking for among the Omar, who argues in Yehuda, who holds. Oh, I'm sorry, both of them hold you cannot use fish. You're right. So we have now a good makar that you cannot buy fish with moish marshasheni, and the shayla of the 2 last prices we have in number base are whether or not you're allowed to buy birds. So now the Gemara wants to know. I don't understand. We have a cloud for the cloud, right? We got a cloud for the cloud. It's very arbitrary. You have different people offering up different similarities. If you look at the similarities of the first brisa, the Lakaka Pri, you're allowed to buy birds. But if you look at that, if you look at the Vlad Vladas Haaretz, that's the similarity you're looking for. A bird doesn't qualify. So, like, how do you quantify the machlokes? Like, what exactly the machlokes as to which similarity it has to subscribe to? So the Gemara quantifies it very beautifully. My timer, Mandamar always my timer. The person, the first Tana who does not exclude oifis, how does he understand the cloud about the cloud? Uman the mimit oifis. And the Mandam who excludes oifis, the second brisa, who says Vlad Vladis Aretz, my time, which is better. So the Gemara is quite simple. It all depends on your approach to the cloud part the cloud. You can dash in the cloud part the cloud in a more restrictive fashion or in a more liberal fashion. Mandamar ba'oifis, the mandamar who's mar ba'oifis, fasavar klola basra dafka. He holds that when you ever have a klal prat klal, the main klal that you focus on is the last klal. If that's what you do, then it's going to turn out you have a prat klal. You have the prat, and then you have the second klal, because the first klal takes the secondary role. What's the law of a prat klal? When you normally have a prat klal, it's very inclusive. Nasa klal moitzav ala prat is travel the who calming. So you look at it like you have a prat klal, and everything is included. But the hani klal kama, the first klal, the secondary klal, comes into play. It's only going to exclude something, even though there's 3 areas of commonality that we know the pratim have. We're only going to exclude something if it can't even make 2. If it makes 2, it'll be good enough. It doesn't have to make all 3. So therefore, the birds will make 2, because the birds are gedula karka, and the birds are free. And that's the svara of the Tana who allows birds. He holds you look at a klal or proper klal. It's klal kama. The dominant klal is the first klal. So therefore, you look at it to begin with as a klal prat. The ein b'chlal el mashin prat, highly restricted. Hani in only these 4 items. Midach midaloi, nothing else. Now, hani klal basra, the klal basra will allow us to include another thing that wasn't included in the pratim. The rebuya called the damila b'shlosh will allow you to include one more thing, but that's only if it's comparable in all 3 attributes. Then we'll allow it. So the 3 attributes are pre, Gedulim in the arts, and Vlad is arts. And a bird doesn't qualify, only behaviors qualify. And I guess we could stop here. Now there's a little bit of a discussion of when we're learning tomorrow. So in Aguda they daven at 8. We want to start at 7. But some people are davening at 7:30, which means we should start earlier. So I'm not sure how to resolve this issue. So can we take a poll over here? What works? I mean, we're still learning at 9, so a lot of people are just going to come to the 9.
I'm a 9.